Hi, I just want to welcome everybody here today. I'm really excited to be able to speak with you all about some things that are passionate to me and that I think really could help us all kind of get back in tune with who we are as light beings. I really want to thank Bijou, who is with Oakhella, which is a wonderful organization, music festival, music event from the Oakland area, for co-sponsoring this event with me, as well as the Life is Living Festival, which is happening this weekend. So definitely make sure to check out their pages and websites to get more information on what exactly is transpiring with that. To start us off, I'd like to ask if anybody has any, I saw a few people holding up little altar items. If you have any sacred things that are on your altar space, and an altar space can be anything. I have a few things behind me that are from my altar space at home. It can be anything that really just represents energy to you, anything that you find sacred or special. If you have those near you, go ahead and do that. I'm going to take the time as we're opening into doing a little bit of a meditation and land acknowledgement. I'm just gonna light some candles in here. When we do that, it helps us center. It helps us understand that we are light, we are energy, we are life-giving forces, we are connected to the universe, which is ultimately gets to be what our theme of this session is: aligning with universal energy, and getting to understand what 360 wellness is. So I'm just going to ask that everybody close their eyes. We're going to take 3 big deep breaths in, and when we take our breaths in, we're going to breathe in from our belly. We're going to hold that energy air, and then we're going to let it out through our nose. So we're going to be doing 3 big breaths. Ready? Everybody breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. One more. Breathe in and breathe out. With our eyes remaining closed, we're going to do another set of breathing, but this time I want you to, as we're breathing in and breathing out, when you breathe out, I want you to expel any energy that is not sitting right in your body. It's a Monday, anything that we have held within us for the day, from the weekend. We're going through some crazy times right now with everything that's happening in the world, and we store that energy in our body. So with these next 3 deep breaths, we're going to breathe in, and when we breathe out, we're going to picture, imagine, feel that releasing. And this time, instead of breathing out with our nose, we're going to breathe out with our mouth. And when we breathe out with our mouth, we're just going to let it go and make an audible sound. Okay? So eyes closed, everybody breathe in. Feel the air filling your lungs, and then we're going to release with an audible sound. I'm going to do 2 more of those energies. Everybody breathe in and breathe out. One more. You should feel a lightness in your body. You should feel the energy moving in your body. We do these things to meditate, to help center us in the world, because, again, there's so many things going on. And I challenge you all to take the time with some of the information that you're going to learn today and reflect on today, to really find ways to utilize that, to do these meditations, to help invoke spirit within you, to help invoke healing within you. And to always remember, as like yoga teaches you, to always come back to the breath. You know, if you're feeling any emotions of anxiety or anything, to always come back to the breath, because the breath is our life-giving force. That is that chi, that is that kundalini, that's all that energy. I also want to take the time to acknowledge the space that we are in. We've had many ancestors, many people, whether this is here locally in the United States, that have been here before us. And so I take this time to acknowledge all the work, all the energy, all the love, everything that they put into this soil. I acknowledge all the ancestors that have come before us, the spirits, the presences. I call those in to us to help us assist us in this session today. And ultimately, know that, as the title states, as above, so below, what happens around us in the universe also happens within us. And just to keep that in mind as we go through this journey today. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and, well, in a moment, I'm going to share a presentation with you. I have worked in education for the past 15 years, off and on, working with kids. And through that experience, I've learned that we are all different types of learners. Some of us are audible learners. Some of us, we learn through, seeing things, visual learners. Some of us are tactile learners. And so I really want to make sure that we acknowledge and utilize this space to reach out to all types of learners. So in the presentation, you'll be seeing slides, you'll be seeing different things to help give us a visual presentation, as well as you'll be seeing me speak in the midst of it all. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Sorry, one moment. Share screen. Thank you for your patience. All righty. Okay, so as I stated, the title of this workshop is As Above, So Below. We are going to be aligning with that universal energy and creating 360 wellness. And through the course of this presentation, you will be learning, what does universal energy mean? What is this 360 wellness? We're going to deep dive more into these things to help give you a better understanding. Some of these topics might be familiar to you. Some of them might be foreign to you. And I just ask that you receive these things with an open mind, an open heart, and open ears. And so we'll get started. So I'm going to start here with this quote, as above, so below. That which is below corresponds to that which is above. And that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. And this is from the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, excuse me. And so what that really is just setting the tone for what we're going to be talking about in this workshop. That which is below corresponds to that which is above us being the universe, below us being us. You think about the same thing when it comes to trees, right? Trees are a great thing. My business is called Through the Trees, and we think about, you see what is above and what is below, but they are all still one entity and needing one another. So to start us off, I'm going to be saying some things today that might or might not be familiar to you. And so I just want to make sure that we take the time to kind of go over some of these words, just in case you're not familiar with them, just in case you're like, what are you meaning? Or, for instance, maybe you're familiar with the words, but are not quite sure of how we're using them in this space. So I just want to take the time to kind of identify some things and really go over them. So we're going to start with a few definitions that, again, are specifically speaking to this session today. So our first one, when I see my numbers are off, our first one is health. So for this session, we are referring to health as soundness of body or mind, right? Freedom from disease or ailment, okay? So pretty familiar for what we're on. We're going to define wellness as the quality or state of being healthy in body and mind, especially as a result of deliberate effort, right? So it's a little bit expanding on health. We're talking about that deliberate effort. We're being mindful. We're making sure we're thinking of the things to do in order to create that healthy body and mind. Next, we have 360 wellness, which is a big thing for this session, right? We think about what is 360 wellness. So 360 wellness, how I am defining this, and this is a term that I have found encompasses kind of all the things we're talking about today, all these health and wellness and balance and all these things. It's 360 wellness. And I define that as the interconnected balance of the mind, body, the spirit, and the soul, in order ultimately to create ease within a person's being, right? So we're seeing that they're interconnected, right? They're intersectional. You know, we can't see one without the other because they all are affecting. And when we think about 360 degrees, we think about 360 degrees being a circle. A circle ultimately has no beginning or end. It's continuous. There might be parts on it where you begin and end, but know that it's continuous, right? Know that it encompasses everything. The circle is the first elemental. That is the one, right? We think of cells, right? The cell is a one circle and then it divides. So for 360 wellness, we're really going to be talking about the cyclical nature of all that is within us. You're also going to hear me talking about balance a lot of times. And so balance is going to be arranging, adjusting, or proportioning parts symmetrically, right? So we think about scales, right? We think about balance, right? Creating balance in our lives, right? And so for today, when we're talking about balance, balance doesn't always mean at every single moment that things are that even balance of it. Balance can mean that maybe at one point we're a little bit heavier on one side, but then how do we create balance to make sure we're feeling in both, right? How do we create? It's this seesaw, this give and effect, and then creating in the moment too, having a space. Next, we have the next two are divine masculine and divine feminine. And I want to be very clear that when we are stating the masculine and the feminine here, this has nothing to do with gender. I really want to make sure we're clear on that. That masculine does not mean man or male identifying, and feminine does not mean female or female identifying. Masculine and feminine are present in both things are present in all humans, right? In all beings, right? When we look into, we'll go into a little bit later on, our charts, your kind of astrology charts, and certain things have certain elemental energies. And so it's like we have both in our lives, and how do we create that balance? But for today, we're referring to the divine masculine as corresponding to the left hemisphere of your brain or the right side of your body, right? And so when we think about that, if you look at science, if you're getting an x-ray of a brain and they're having someone doing different things, right? If you're doing something that's task-oriented, right? It's firing off in your left side of your brain, but that's all associated with the right side of your body, right? The left hemisphere rules the right side of our body, right? So again, that's that creating of energy. That's that logistical energy that the divine masculine controls, right? It's logistical and analytical. It's the doing, it's the acting, right? So then the other counterpart to that is the divine feminine. And the divine feminine corresponds to the right hemisphere of our brain and the left side of our body. That side of the body is the receiving energy, right? It's artistic and spiritual. It is being, it is allowing, right? So when we think about, especially when we talk into the chakra systems, which are a philosophy that we have these energy wheels in our body, and there's a bunch of them, but we'll really refer to 7 of them today. And so when we think about that energy moves up and down in us, right? With our right hand, with that divine masculine, we're giving, we're doing, we're creating action. And with our divine feminine, we're receiving, right? We're allowing things. So again, it's how do we have that balance? So these are some definitions that I really want to make sure that we just understand specifically for this session today. And so the next thing that we have is the dimensions of health. So a lot of times we think of health as just like you hear physical, mental, emotional, right? And so for today, I am defining these various dimensions of health as physical, as mental, as emotional, as social, and as spiritual. And to know that all of these encompass us, and they are all, again, that 360 connected together energy. So physical energy can be described as moving your body, right? That's that exercise, the actual physical movement, right? Physical is well-balanced meals, our nutrition, what we're eating, how we're processing that energy, right? Physical health is sleeping. What is our sleep schedule like? What type of environments are we sleeping? What are we creating? You know, physical is managing that stress. It is receiving preventative medical care. Keyword preventative, right? Medical care should not be treating after the fact. How can we heal ourselves before, right? It's also about learning and identifying symptoms of dis-ease in the body. So I just want to be clear on that. We hear disease, and really that is dis-ease in the body, because the opposite of disease is ease, right? Ease meaning carefree, comfortable, pleasant, easy, right? So that's what that is, that alignment. When we're in alignment, we're feeling ease in our body. And it's when we have dis-ease, right? So that could be sickness, that could be other emotional things, that could be all these sort of things that's creating dis-ease in the body. So just being able to identify those sort of symptoms definitely has to deal with physical health. So next we have mental health. And mental health is encouraging and stimulating all those mental activities that we need in order to grow and to learn, right? So everything that's dealt with the brain, with the mental, right? It's being able to know how to utilize resources available to us, right? To expand one knowledge, how to deduct, reasoning, all those sort of things that we think of as mental capacities. That is that mental health for us, right? That's the wellness, mental wellness, right? That's dealing with different things of feelings of anxiety, feelings of depression, feelings of, excitement, all those sort of things of nervousness. All those have to deal and are created from the mental. It allows us to help improve skills and ultimately to gain insight into the world. So next we have emotional health, right? And emotional health is possessing the ability to feel and express, right? To showcase, to give forth, right? That divine feminine the divine masculine to give out, but also to receive the human emotions. And a lot of things are present in humans, but there are also some things present in animals, right? Animals can feel certain things, they can feel some of these emotions. And so we're just now starting to, as a current cycle civilization of people, understand the power of that. But again, those emotions are happiness, sadness, anger, just to explain a few. And ultimately, that emotional health is also allowing oneself to love and be loved, right? Which is not always easy for everybody. It helps us encompass optimism, self-esteem, and ultimately self-acceptance. Next, we have social health, and that's the capability to interact successfully with others. Keyword successfully, right? We're learning how to implement good communication skills. Communication also has to deal with the mental, but it's how we implement that with others is the social aspect. How we develop intimacy with others, how we create and support our network of friends and family. That's health as well. That's very important to us as well for our well-being. And then we have spiritual health. And spiritual health is maintaining a set guiding beliefs, principles, and our values that help give direction in one's life, right? It's the willingness to seek meaning and purpose in existence, right? To question those things and to appreciate all the stuff that we cannot explain or understood, but we know it to be true. We believe it to be true. And so later on, as we go into this session, we will really see how these healths are directly tied in with things in nature and things in the universe. So now we're going to move on to really what is 360 wellness, right? That's our big thing. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier on about that cyclical nature of the interconnectedness of all those healths, all those things. And so we're going to flesh that out a little bit more. So when we think about 360 health, it can be present and found in both ourselves, right? The health of ourselves, as well as the health of the universe. It can often be described as microcosm and macrocosm. And those things are encompass all the different elemental energies, and they are expressed in different ways. So we're going to dive a little bit more into that. So when I talk about microcosm and macrocosm, right, I'm really talking about how the universe and the body are one unit. They are harmonious, right? They are creating together. They are affecting together, that as above, so below. And for this session, we're referring to microcosm as oneself, as me, as this being, right? And the macrocosm as the universe. So everything that is encompassed in the universe, all the planets, all the stars, all the earth, all nature, everything. Because ultimately, within each lies the other. And through understanding one, which typically is the microcosm, so through gaining knowledge and insight into oneself and how we work and how we function and how things are coming together, then we can understand the other. So understand that macrocosm. And just to keep in mind and remember that all elements, which we're going to get to next, and their energies are present in both of those cosms. And then again, when we understand the elemental characteristics expressed in one of the cosms, so we understand how the elements are expressed in the universe, say air is wind, right? We see how it is. We then understand how it's expressed in the other, how air is expressed inside of us through communication, through breath, right? So we're going to dive a little bit more into the specific elements of those. So just to tie in our elemental energy, so going back to, as we discussed, the 5 different health dimensions. That's mental, physical, social, emotional, and spiritual, right? Those are directly tied into specific elements. So air, it works with our mental and our social health. Fire represents and works with that physical health, that action. Water works with our emotional health, our fluidity, our feelings. The earth as well works with physical health. And then finally, we have the 5th element, which makes me think of that movie, you know, that came out some years ago, if you're old enough to remember that. And, you know, understanding that the 5th element was this space, it was kind of this unknown thing. And so it is. We're going to talk more about it, but understanding that ether being that space in between, kind of directly corresponds and helps us understand our spiritual beliefs, right? That omnipresence of both of those things. So first, we're going to talk about air. And when we go through these things, we're going to talk about its universal energies, as well as the energies and how they're expressed in the self. So in the universe, we see air as wind, as oxygen, as fog, as storms like tornadoes or hurricanes. Air can be described as cool, swift, strong, light, calm, etc., right? When we think of all those attributes of air. Well, the same thing can be said within us, right? Within us, air is our mental level of consciousness, right? It goes back to that mental health. It is thought. It is all communication, all intellectual facilities, all reasoning, all idea making, all memory, anything social with that. And all those things of consciousness, thought, all idea making, memory, all those can be used in the same, described in the same way that are the universal energies, right? We can be communicating with someone and you've been talking, you're like, that was a dry conversation. That conversation didn't have much to it. Think about how they react to each other. And we got to remember that air is intangible and unseen, but it is also in constant movement, just like our thoughts. Even when we are sleeping, our brain, our subconscious is still firing away. There are so many things that are still happening. So even though we can't see it, can't tangibly touch it, we can't put a name on it, we know that it is still there and present. Communication and thought is still present. That's why it's really important to remember that where focus goes, where we're thinking goes, energy flows, right? So what we think about is what we become. It goes back to the law of attraction, right? You project, you think about what you want. And then to remember that everything in the universe breathes. We're all breathing, both as human beings and as nature and as elements. We're breathing, we're moving, we're growing, we're in this constant state of movement. We use air to create change. So even in a universal standpoint, think about this. When we have high winds, that creates change, right? There could be destruction. There could be people having to rebuild with tornadoes and stuff. But it moves things. It moves thoughts. It moves communication along. And so we really need to remember to keep that in mind, that when we use our thought, when we use our air, when we're communicating, we're doing it so to invoke change, whether that's change intrinsically or outwardly. Going back to, as we were describing the divine masculine and divine feminine, air is a divine masculine energy, right? It is powerful, yet still refreshing. It takes action. Air is action. So then it directly corresponds with the zodiac signs of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And if you yourself are one of those air signs, or if you know someone in your life that is one of those air signs, you know they're very analytical. They're very in their head. They're the great communicators of it, right? The Gemini being the twin, it knows how to communicate from both sides of balance. Libra is that partnership communicating of balance, right? They think a lot. Aquarius is often that eccentric thinker, having that expression of, oh, what's out of this box? All of those are the great communicators. And when you look at your birth chart, you will see that all the planet celestial bodies can be in different signs, right? And we'll go over through the course of this what kind of each planet means, represents energy-wise. And so just note that if you ever see any of those air signs next to it, that it's going to represent these qualities of air in whatever planet that represents. So specifically talking about these air planets, it is represented and can be found in Jupiter, Mercury, and Uranus. So Jupiter is the planet of growth, of expansion. It's how we move, it's how we grow, it's how we expand, it's how we gain knowledge. It's the philosophical planet, right? So when we think about air again as being expansive, it's tied in with Jupiter. So in your chart, when you see Jupiter, that's how do I grow? How do I become abundant in life? Mercury, as a lot of us know, when we have Mercury retrograde and stuff, it affects communication, it affects transportation, all those things. Mercury is the ruling planet of communication, right? It's ruled by Gemini and Libra, those communicating things. And then ultimately Uranus, which is ruled by Aquarius, which, as I explained before, is that eccentric, out of the box, not in the norm, not with the normal go flow of things. It's that exciting electrical energy. And then when we think about tarot, right? Tarot cards are a form of divination that people use. And so whenever you have a tarot card or do a tarot card reading, air is directly associated with the swords card, the swords deck, right? Swords have all these things that we are talking about, all those first few attributes that we are discussing. That's what the swords cards represent. They're letting us know how to communicate, how to think. And then they are also connected, air is also connected with our chakras. So as I touched on before, our chakras, there are many chakras, but we really deal with the 7 chakras. They're kind of the most familiar. And so air can be found in both our heart chakra, because that is where our lungs are. That's where we filled with air. That's where we breathe, as well as the 5th chakra, which is our throat, right? Again, how we communicate. And the colors that are associated with air are light blue, like a sky blue. So we think again, air, sky blue, as well as white, thinking of the clouds, thinking of a white canvas where anything can be put on. So air having that blank canvas, thought creation having that blank canvas. So anytime that you're feeling, hey, I need to have some more air in my life, I need to do some deep thinking or anything like that, right? Touching our hearts, touching our throats, wearing crystals, jewelries that are those colors, wearing clothing that are those colors, really helps us bring on those attributes of air. So next we have fire. So fire as a universal energy is hot, it's wild, it's heat, it's the sunshine, right? It's literally fire, flames. It can be described as warm, as giving light, as a fast burn, as a slow burn, as temperature in general with its heat, cold, right? As ignition, right? We use that creative spark to light things. And so then again, how it's reflected in ourselves is physical energy. What are we doing? What action are we moving? I'm moving my arms right now. I'm moving my lips, right? I'm feeling from myself within. So understanding that it's that sort of energy, it's that creative energy, it's where we get our spark, it's our confidence, it's our action, it's our passions. Fire can be, and action can be both destructive and constructive, right? When we think about all these fires that have been happening on the West Coast, to us, yeah, they are destructive, they're destroying things. But ultimately, from fire comes rebirth, right? Comes creation, comes new life. And again, the universe needs to balance itself out to have those sort of energies. Fire is also tied in with our sexuality, right? And how we express, how we feel with ourselves and with others. And finally, our willpower. The fire element is expansive and flows upward. So again, when we're thinking about that divine masculine releasing energy, right? It flows upward and out of us because it's action oriented. We use that fire to take action in our lives, right? You think about that, like, I got to put fire under his feet, or they had the fire in my belly, right? To get that confidence, to do things, to try things, to work on, take that action. Sometimes it's like, I need a fire lit under my ass, whatever it may be. But how do we expand? How do we move forward? Something to think about is that we as a people, as a human civilization, once we mastered the control of fire, right? We learned how to build it. We learned how to create it. We learned how to control it so it wouldn't be out of control. We learned how to make it bright enough, warm enough, and everything, that it allowed us to have an evolutionary shift. Because before that, we had to stay in our local spaces, right? We weren't able to explore. We weren't able to go see new lands, right? We weren't able to experience new things because we didn't have the heat or warmth. But now we are able to. Now we are able to prepare food, to cook food. So fire is a very action-sustaining energy. And like air, it is a divine masculine energy that reflects and drives the drive, your drive, as well as the willpower of energy. So if you think about those fire signs, right? And I'm a Sagittarian, right? And so I have, in a lot of my planets, I have a lot of Sagittarius. I have a lot of fire within me. Anybody that knows me personally definitely knows that. And so it means that you're always kind of exciting, right? I'm having this energy. I'm not one of those people that's going to be real quiet and calm because I have so much fire. So again, be present when you look at, say, your birth chart or anything. What sort of elemental energies do you have in you? Does it describe those things? So along with Sagittarius, we have Aries and Leo, which are also fire signs. Aries, being the first sign of the zodiac calendar, of the zodiac wheel, literally is the trailblazer, right? So we think about that blaze. They are the ones that set fire to the path. They create, they forge forward in their energies. Leo is ultimately ruled by the sun. That is its ruling planet. So when we think of Leos, we think of the lion that's the head of the pack, that's confident energy, that's just radiating this bright light, that is sure of themselves, that has that passion, has that creative. And then with those zodiac signs, we have specific planets that are directly tied into it. So Mars is the planet of passion, the planet of action, the planet of energy. Mars is often when we look at where do we argue? How do we argue? What do we get upset about? What are we passionate about? Your Mars planet will let you know how you do that, how you respond, right? You could have, say, a Mars in Scorpio, and Scorpios are depths and take things personally and really truly feel, right? And for those of you that know Scorpios, sometimes think, oh, they just take things to heart, right? So if your Mars is in Scorpio, then that means it's passion. You get really passionate. You really take things personally. You really want things to happen. You really feel deep, right? Mars is also where we express our sexual energy, how we enjoy to be loved and express love and passion, how we get anger, how we like to receive love. And then ultimately, as described, the sun is again that Leo energy, that bright, confident energy. How do we shine bright in life? Now, when it comes to the tarot cards, fire energy directly corresponds with the wands, the deck of wands. Because think about it, when you see a wand and you see a magician, right? And it's fire, it's sparks, it's spells are coming out of it, right? It's creation, it's that spark of energy, it's that ignition. So whenever you pull or someone pulls wands or you see wands cards, know that it's that fire, it's that creative energy and passion. And then it's directly associated with our second chakra, which is your sacral chakra, which is below your belly button, in your, sexual organ space. That is the second chakra. That is your sacral chakra. That directly corresponds with emotions, passions, physicality, all of those things, as well as our third chakra, which is our solar plexus. And that's right below, if you have your rib cage and you go a couple fingers down, kind of in that little dip is your solar plexus. And our solar plexus, think about this, when you think about your gut, where do you get nervous? When you're not confident, you're feeling nervous. You feel it in your stomach. You feel it and you're worried, or it's like, hey, where do we feel our intuition? Where do we feel our willpower, right? You always feel that in your gut, and that's your solar plexus working. So because of those two chakras, we have the two colors of orange and yellow, which actually directly look like fire flames when we think about it, with orange directly corresponding to our sacral chakra and yellow corresponding to our solar plexus chakra. So as we're trying to build, to just know and be mindful that, hey, if I'm about to go try something new, and I'm feeling a little nervous, I'm feeling a little anxious, let me throw on a yellow shirt, right? To help brighten up, because our body receives that energy, that yellow vibrates, those colors, and any of the colors that go with the elements. So next we have the water, the element of water. And in the universal sense of water, it is expressed through the various bodies of water. So that's oceans, streams, lakes, ponds, all of those things. It's also in the weather systems, such as rain, storms, hurricanes, monsoons, floods. All those natural things are all the water element. Water can be refreshing. It can be calm. It can be fast. It can be flowing. Water has depths to it. You can have shallow waters on the surface, or you can go deep into the deep, dark, abysmal of the oceans, right? As a self-health, it really corresponds to our emotional levels of consciousness, all our feelings, all our sensations, what we desire and want, all our purification, right? Water is purifying, both in the universal sense and in the self sense, right? We think about, we use water to cleanse, we water to wash things away, to cleanse things. You know, we take showers to cleanse our bodies. Certain religious practices utilize water to create this purification, to ready a person for certain spaces. So to understand that through that purification, that ultimately we have healing through that. Water is also associated with our intuition, our dreams, our dream worlds, and harmony, ultimately the balance of harmony. And we got to keep in mind that this element is a fluid element, right? And when we think about fluid, it's not either or, it's anywhere in between. It's fluid, it's constantly moving, a constant state, it's always flowing. Our emotions too are always flowing, right? They can be wavering, right? They can have up and down, they can move with the tides. And something to think about is water takes up 70% of the world. And we are also made up of 70% of water. So when we really talk about that microcosm, macrocosm, we have to understand that, yes, we are exact representations. And then you get into the moon, which affects those tides. The moon affects us and our emotions. Something else to remember about water is that it's the most versatile of elements. It is able to assume any state, right? It can be a gas, it can be a liquid, and it can be a solid. No other elements are able to do all of those things. And something to keep in mind as we were talking about it's fluid and flowing is that even in a solid state, so even in ice, the water molecules are still moving. They're still flowing around. Water is our gateway to that higher dimensions. Our emotions are our gateway, our feelings are our gateway to that spirituality, to being able to connect to things that are outside of ourselves, outside of the ego. It is through feeling that we are able to understand things. Water is a divine feminine energy. It reflects subtle power. And just like the divine energy, divine feminine energy, as we discussed earlier, it is receptive and it is adaptive. Right? Our feelings are receptive and adaptive. As far as zodiac signs, the water signs are Pisces, which, as we know, or maybe you do or do not know, Pisces is that true water sign in the sense of they are the ones that are the unconditional love, right? Pisces is ruled by Neptune. And when we think about Neptune, as far as like Greek mythology, Neptune was the ruler of the seas, right? And so Pisces are that unconditional, fluid, emotional love, right? They really are in tune. The Pisces are often the ones filled with intuition and having dreams and having psychic abilities. And then we look at Cancer, right? The Cancer water signs. The Cancers are the ones that really truly feel. Cancer's ruled by the moon. So they feel the ebb and flow of feelings and emotions. They are sensitive, right? As a Cancer, you know, it's represented by a crab, and the crab can come out of their shell or in their shell, right? They're very personal. And then as we described earlier, we have Scorpio. So whereas Pisces might be the shallower waters, those warm, cooling, refreshing waters, Scorpio represents those depths. Scorpios are the ones that are not afraid to go deep, not afraid to look into meaning of things, not afraid of the dark, not afraid of the unknown, right? And so those are all water attributes. And so as described with the zodiac signs, the moon, which again is the ruler of Cancer, the moon is directly tied, that's where our emotions, the moon is tied to the universal womb. And I don't mean necessarily the organ of our womb for, you know, those that have that organ. It is the universal energy, mother, divine feminine energy of the world that moon is really tied into. Venus is tied into this, right? Because Venus is love and emotions. And then ultimately Pluto, which again is represented by Scorpio, represents Scorpio, that far, cold planet, but still mysterious. In tarot, as fitting, it's the cups. It's represented by the cups, which do hold that water in it, right? They're the ones that are fluid. So whenever you pull a cups card, you see cups, it's directly corresponding to matters of the heart, matters of the sacral chakra area, matters of emotions and feelings and intuition, and is letting you know how to tap into those things. So as just discussed, the chakras that are corresponding are our sacral chakra, because like fire, they hold passions, right? Passion isn't just fire energy, it's also emotional energy. And so when we really tap into that sacral chakra, we really tap into that fluidity. That's where we hold our connections. That's where we hold, anytime we make relationships, that's where all our cords are created, is in that area. And so when we need to heal in emotional areas, we need to get the energy moving in our sacral spaces, as well as the heart. So even though the heart is associated with air because of the lungs, our heart is also where we feel a lot of those emotions, sometimes feelings of grief, of hardness, of sadness. You know, think about when you get bad news, you feel, oh, I got tightness in my chest, right? It's literally expressing that energy. And then again, because of the sacral chakra, orange is associated with water, as well as varying degrees of blues and greens. Then we have the earth, and earth is a universal energy. It's all types of terrain. So your mountains, your deserts, your beaches, any of those things that are making up our terrains. It's our soil, it's our plants. It's hard, it can be soft, it's malleable, it's nature, just all nature. It's roots, it's tactile, it's tangible. And then in ourselves, it's represented in growth, in grounding, right? How many times you feel anxious that when you go for a walk, you are literally in nature, maybe putting your feet in some sand, that you feel calm, you feel grounded. Earth provides structure and stability. It's what we need to build things on. It provides sustenance for us. It allows things to be fertile. It gives us support. It provides us those basic primal needs. It also represents all the structures of our bodies, our skeletal structure and whatnot. And ultimately, it's those tangible material possessions, those things that we own. And to know that this element creates the foundation on which things grow and develop. So for all my plant mommies and poppies out there that know, hey, when I'm transplanting a plant or I'm doing a plant, I have to be mindful of the kind of soil that it's in, or else it won't allow it to grow and flourish, right? Maybe it's the wrong soil and it provides too much moisture and it doesn't need that. So just be mindful that all that soil, all the earth elements, all the things with us, the structures that we create, we are ultimately building a foundation so that we, like plants, can grow above and grow below, or grow within and grow without. Earth seeks to draw things together with itself in order to bring harmony and rootedness, right? So we think about nature and a lot of these things that are going on, and yes, global warming, of course, global warming is happening, but nature knows what it needs to do to get right. We might not be okay as a human race, but it will be okay. It will rebirth and recycle and come through. It is going to create that harmony. And earth, like water, is a divine feminine energy that is receptive, and it deals with the physical or external level of consciousness, right? All those things outside of us, again, those tactile, tangible things. But we receive things into the earth, and it gives out, but it gives out in a different way than, say, fire action energy. It is associated with the Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo signs of the zodiac. Those are all earth energies. Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, with both having the energies of structure and balance, right? They don't want to be too much out of the way. They don't want to be the airy, which is too much over here, the fire that can be blazing, right? It's controlled. So Saturn in itself is our planet of, look at it like the parent. Where Jupiter wants to expand, Saturn wants to contract. Saturn wants to keep it in a space. Saturn allows us, gives us those guidelines, right? Which is really that Capricorn energy, really allowing, hey, we don't want to go too much, one way or the other, we're just going to keep that. Or you think about Tauran energy, right? Taurans really love the home, right? Taurans are happiest in their spaces and their comforts. And when we think about home, right? We think homes, again, have to be built on that foundation. And a home, we think of 4 walls, right? As a structure. And 4, literally in numerology, is the foundational energy. We think about this year, it's 2020, which is a 4 energy, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 0, it's a 4. So this is a building foundational energy year. And then we look into Virgo. And Virgo is an earth sign as well, but Virgo is that how taps into that again, that external level of consciousness. How can Virgos give? They are the servants of the zodiac sign. They are the earth givers. They are that feminine in that way of creating balance, right? Virgos, if you know Virgos, and my rising is Virgo, so I understand. Virgos are like, there's an order, there's a balance, there's a structure. And so again, as we said, those planets are Earth, Saturn, ruled by ruling planet of Capricorn, and then Venus, the ruling planet of Taurus. It is also directly tied into the Pentacles deck in tarot, because Pentacles, again, can receive literally something you're going to receive, right? So you could pull a Pentacle card, you could be talking about, say, jobs or business, right? And a Pentacle card comes up. So it could let you know that something actually literally physically is coming your way, right? Versus say an air sign when we talk about tarot, could mean, oh, this is what we need to think about business-wise, right? So it's again that tactile things or those stability, right? Allowing us again those needs of structure in our life. And earth element is 100% corresponds with our root chakra. Our root chakra is down at the base of the spine, right? Our root chakra, our spine in general, right? It lets us know, provides stability to our body. It allows us those things. It's connected to our lower body. It's connected to our legs and everything. And so when we feel out of balance, when we feel anxious, when we feel unhappy, when we feel all these things that we're just all over the place, right? When we have issues within families or anything, we need to create that balance, that structure, that foundation. We have to tap into our root chakra, right? Go out in nature. If you're ever feeling stressed, go out in nature. Get your hands in the soil, right? Feel that, connect with that, let yourself connect with that universal energy to help heal. And the colors of the root chakra are red, as well as black and brown and greens directly correspond with the earth chakra as well, or excuse me, with the earth element as well. Then we have ether, the element of ether. And in a universal sense, ether is that carrier of sound and space. It is vibration. It is omnipresent. It is subtle energy. It is cold, dry, light, and expansive. But it is those things because it has not yet meshed and melded and taken on other elements. So it is cold because it has not been fused with the fire energy yet. It is dry because it has not been fused with the water element. It is light in weight because it has not been affected by the earth element, right? And it is expansive. In a self standpoint, ether represents our conscious and unconscious mind. All those connections, all the things, when things are firing off in your brain, it's those little things in between, that energy that's connecting, right? It represents our spirituality, our truth, our intuition, the stillness in space. This element is truly the essence of emptiness. It is the space between all other elements. It is the space between all things, right? It is those things that we cannot see. It is omnipresent, right? It is omnipresent. So we think about as a carrier of sound, right? We know it's our voice, but how does it move, the air move through that energy, In Ayurveda, which really talks about ether as an element, and Ayurveda is a 5,000-year-old healing practice from India. And so Ayurveda really takes into account this ether, right? This omnipresence of knowing that, hey, it's our organs might be our mouth and our tongue, but it's the ether that allows that sound to be heard, to be spoken out, to be heard, right? It allows space and energy to move. And ultimately, we have to remember that it is the substratum from which all other elements are derived. So that again goes back to that space, right? Space, the Big Bang, all of these things, all elements come from it. And since all elements come from it, it is also therefore a part of all elements. Ether doesn't have any form or boundaries or limits, right? So if we are thinking about if you had a cup, right? The air in the space we'll use that as ether, right? Now, if that air didn't have those boundaries of cup, it would be expanded, all expansing, right? So if it doesn't have boundaries, it has no limits. So as far as planets goes, it's literally the universal space. It is literally the space between the planets and the stars, the celestial beings. It is the space within the molecules that make up the gases that make up the planets. It is that space within everything. Now in tarot, it directly corresponds with the major arcana. So the major arcana is that signs of, you think of like the Empress card or the Fool or the Tower or the Hangman. Those are all major arcana cards. And the major arcana cards is ultimately the journey of the Fool. And fool not meaning like, oh, you a fool, you dumb, you stupid. No, fool meaning as this novice, this new learner, right? And so through the major arcana, we learn things, right? We go on this journey, you're experiencing things, right? The Tower happens when, all things tumble down and you're born anew, And so to understand that we have these different spaces within the major arcana, right? That we have these, whereas the swords, the wands, the cups, the pentacles, all of those things represent those tangibles, or not, excuse me, not tangible necessarily, but the specific things, right? Specific communication. This is what encompasses them all, right? All the elements take place. Ether is directly corresponding with our fifth chakra, our throat chakra, because as we said, it's the carrier of sound. It's associated with our third eye chakra, which is the chakra that helps us with intuition. It's where we get our psychic abilities. It's when you feel like, oh, my little spidey senses are going off, or, oh, I thought I was thinking about someone and then they called me, right? Those are all our third eye chakras, right? To being able to see beyond the consciousness, right? Our dreaming when we're waking, our subconscious. And then ultimately it's the crown chakra, right? Which is, I would describe the crown chakra as if you were to take your spiritual energy and be outside your body and be this omnipresent person or an omnipresent entity. And you were to look down at yourself, onto the ego, onto the human form, and you're able to see right and wrong and to know things, right? That is that crown chakra. The crown chakra is that understanding that as above, so below. All of us right now are activating our crown chakra because we are stepping outside of our ego. We're stepping outside of that logistical mind to understand the connectedness of things. And so because we have those chakras, we're tied in with the colors of light blue, your throat chakra, indigo, your crown chakra, or excuse me, your third eye chakra, and purple, which is our crown chakra. So now that we have a little bit more understanding of the elements and how elements are a part of everything, right? And how we have to be mindful of the different connections, we now can really be like, how do we get onto this healing journey? How do we learn and grow? And so it first starts with understanding that, as we described before, that in order to heal, in order to have that 360 wellness, we have to understand that everything is interconnected and everything has to be in balance for an alignment. So knowing all these elemental things, knowing how, hey, If certain things happen, how do I target them, right? How do I keep in mind all these different elemental things? We're able to kind of grow and help that disease in our body. So the first step in our healing journey is to identify the cause and effect of why things are happening, right? To first think about those things, right? To take that mental energy. So if I have a crick in my neck, I wake up in a funny in my neck, I'd be identifying, okay, well, yes, maybe I slept wrong, and that's why I did it. Well, that's physical energy. What mental energy? Oh, my neck is associated with my throat chakra. Maybe I'm not communicating something, right? What am I not feeling, right? So identifying why is this pain happening, right? If I have a sore throat, what is happening? Yes, my immune system could be weak, but again, what am I not speaking on? What are all those other elemental things? Because in 360 wellness, we have to keep them all into play. So next we treat dis-ease, right? And again, as we explained that before, that's dis-ease is the opposite of having ease, opposite of being aligned, opposite of harmony, opposite of balance in your body. And we need to treat it. We need to take that action from all those 5 dimensions of health and elemental energies. So if I have a sore throat, I'm not just going to go, of course, I could go to a doctor. Let me go make sure I don't have strep throat, right? You want to check those physical things off, right? And what are the fluids? What am I putting into my body to coach, right? What am I speaking on? And something to keep in mind is sometimes we have an ailment or sometimes we have dis-ease in our body, say, example, again, with the throat. And it's not only just because things are underactive, right? We're not using our throat chakra. Sometimes it can be the flip. Sometimes it can be because we are overusing things, right? So understanding what are all these things? How can I treat this? So I'm going to speak on things. I'm not going to speak on things. Let me write. Let me do, right? I'm treating my sore throat from, again, that 360 wellness mindset. And then and then next, we have to utilize our ancestors and their knowledge to aid in healing and growth. So that ties into that emotional health. Again, how can we be intuitive? Because so many people before us, so many ancestors, so many civilizations before us understood this connection of mind, body, spirit, and soul, understood 360 wellness, understood that the microcosm is part of the macrocosm and vice versa. And they knew how to treat things by hitting it from all those angles. So how do we call upon those? How do we utilize the energy, the epigenetics that is already within us, that has been passed down in our blood, in our spirits? How do we tap into that? How do we truly feel to heal these things? And then next, we have to make sure, like Earth, we maintain a balance. We create a foundation in all the dimensions of health. And as stated, we remember that all those things are interconnected. All those things are going to affect one another, right? And how do we create the balance? How do we create a sturdy structure so that things do not keep happening? And then finally, we have to make sure that we understand that life is cyclical, right? So life goes in cycles. Everything is present in cycles, right? Our flowers, our nature, our healing, right? Cycles of death and cycles of birth, right? And to always remember that everything begins and ends ultimately to then start anew. And when we say anew, not start a new thing, starting anew means we're starting on a new cycle, we're starting on a new path with different insight, with different knowledge, right? We're anew, we're creating new things. And so just when we really look at these things and we're creating our 360 wealth and we're coming together in all this healing, we have to remember the elements, right? We have to remember air, that what we think, we become, right? So whatever we want to do, we first need to think of it. And then after we think of it, we have to fuse that with action, with that fire energy, right? So we have to create, we have to put forth, right? But sometimes when we create things, things don't work out, right? But that's because it then needs to be infused with that emotional energy, right? We have to put that spirit into it. If you're starting a business, you could think of it, you could have a great idea, put these action steps in place, but it might not work if you're not putting your heart and soul and infusing that. And then we need to have earth, right? We need to have that earth energy. We need to create that structure and that balance to make sure that things are sustaining, right? To make sure things are fertile, to make sure that we can receive those things. And then finally, that ether, to understand all the space in between and that all these things are interconnected and everything flows. And when we keep in mind that all those elemental energies are connected, all those elemental energies are present in life, present in the world, present in nature, and they're present with us, then we have the power to utilize everything. When we understand how to heal through these ways in ourselves, we understand how to heal the world. We understand how others work, right? When we understand that all these things are present in us, we understand that they're present in other people, and people might be feeling or seeing the same things. They might be at a different place in the cycle. And in order to just restore that health and wellness, again, we have to interconnect and we have to align with the universe, with us, because as above, so below, as within, as without. So that's the end of my presentation. I realized that was probably a lot of energy, and hopefully some things were familiar. Hopefully some things were enlightening to you. I hope there was some takeaways. I hope there was some clear things. And Bijou, if you're cool, I'm open to, open up the floor to any questions or concerns or any kind of little things that people want to have. And I will try to bring up.
I was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say if folks have questions, feel free to just hop in. We don't have to do any kind of like formal submit anything in the chat. I do see one question in the chat though. Let's just kick us off. So thank you. I can't even say this right. I guess LP11 would like you to talk a little bit more about chakras, and Mary Ann would like you to talk more about nature, trees, birds, animals, etc.
Yeah. So our chakra systems, again, we look at chakras. Chakras are wheels, right? They can be looked at as wheels, and wheels turn and move energy. And just like we think about in a car, right? Because that's where we're familiar, a bicycle, wheels need to be tuned, right? And sometimes, to make sure that they're efficient, to make sure that they're moving. And so our chakras are different wheels within our body that help move that energy upward or move that energy downward. And again, that's the divine masculine energy is the energy that moves upward and out to our system, and the divine feminine moves down and in. So a lot of our chakras are tied in with personal things as well as universal things. So our personal chakras are the root chakra, the sacral chakra, and the solar plexus chakra. And I could say even the heart chakra. And so again, our root chakra lets us know that's where we're grounded, right? So an underactive, right? Like the wheel is not moving enough, it's moving really slow, the energy's not moving. An underactive chakra root chakra would be feeling unstable, feeling really anxious, right? Dealing with anxiety, feeling like you're all over the place, maybe having issues in a family. The root chakra really deals with our family and home situation. And so how do we tune into those sort of things, right? And overactive would be, we're doing too much, we're too grounded, we're not being fluid enough, we're too stuck in our ways, we're too stubborn, right? Our sacral chakra, again, would be your emotional energy, where we're holding things. So an underactive sacral chakra would be, holding too much onto emotion, feeling too many things, not letting things go, And overactive would be the opposite, taking on way too much, having too much energetic connection, right? Maybe not being mindful of how we're sending and receiving sexual energy. Our solar plexus, again, that confidence, that's where we feel our gut, that's where we feel our pride, right? That's where we shine, right? We feel it, from here, it's that fire within our belly. Then you have the heart chakra, and the heart chakra is where we feel love, more the partnership emotions. That's also where we feel grief, that's where we hold things. So a full heart chakra, right? A full perfectly moving is like you feel airy, you feel light, you don't feel like you're heavy on the chest. And then we have our throat chakra. Your throat chakra, again, is your communicator, you know, and underactive could be you're not communicating enough. How many times are we holding and suppressing our emotions that are coming from our sacral? Maybe the sacral chakra is releasing, they're coming up, and then they stop right here, you know? A lot of times it ties in with partnerships and family relationships and so many things that we don't feel. And so then an overactive, again, like I explained before, could be talking too much, saying too many things, communicating, not listening enough, not receiving enough, right? And then we have our third eye chakra, which, as I explained before, that's like your intuition. That's your psychic ability. That's when you feel things, the unknown things. That's where our dream realm, right? That's where we're perceiving things from another eye, right? And a blocked third eye chakra would be we can't see the connections between things, right? Our dreams are not very good. We are not trusting our intuition. We're not leaning into it, right? We're not feeling those connectedness of things, right? And then we have, again, our crown chakra, which is kind of that omnipresence, that if we were to be these God bodies outside of our body, how do we look? How do we awareness? You know, I often joke that you see, especially in the Black community, all your aunties and your grandmas, like they always are wearing purple. And you're like, why is purple the older lady like favorite color? And that's because they know, maybe they don't know, but they've received so much knowledge in life that they wear those colors and they wear those things. And just in regards to chakras, we just always want to be mindful that the energy is always flowing. And again, it's that balance. How do we receive things? How do we give things? How do we incorporate, all sorts of stuff, And then I would say the last question, which was, how are like the birds and the trees tied in with that? So every living thing has those elemental energies in it. And so when we think about trees are so powerful and magic. They give us the energy. How many times do we sit in nature and look at the trees and you can feel the swaying and flowing? They give us knowledge. And the biggest thing I can say is when we're stepping into nature, when you are in nature, to slow down, right? To understand, find that ether, find that stillness in it all, and to connect, right? Use your third eye to connect with the birds, And birds are an amazing creature because you have to think about, they are one of the only animal that can be both on land, that can be in air, and that can swim as well. And so just how do we be dynamic like nature, right? Nature understands that all these elements are part of it, right? And it creates that synergy. Birds and trees are a great example. They create that synergy. They know how to utilize on an intrinsic level all these different things, right? So how can we learn from nature and in those spaces to ultimately, create 360 wellness? Because 360 wellness is happening in the universe. How do we tap into that?
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. We have a little over 10 minutes left. Did anyone have any other questions that you would like to ask Nicole? Feel free to drop them in the chat or just unmute. All right. No other questions? Okay. Well, I have a couple questions. If you don't mind me asking.
No, I don't.
So I'd just like to hear a little bit more. I totally blanked and did not read your bio and give you a proper intro. So apologies for that. But I wanted to ask, can you talk a little bit about your journey and how you got into root work and how you arrived at this place?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So I consider myself a root worker. And so a root worker is a form of healer, and root work is directly tied into hoodoo, right? And hoodoo, not to be confused with voodoo or voodoo. Hoodoo is specific to the Black African American transatlantic slave experience, right? Hoodoo was created by our ancestors here in North America and in South America, but really North America, by combining the elements and the energies and the religions of Africa, right? So a lot of those African traditional religions, a big portion would be Ifa, right? Ifa faith, which is from the culture of Yoruba, Yoruban faith. So that's where we hear a lot of the Orishas, you know, like Yamoya and Oshun and Shango and all those things. And so they had those energies, right? And then they combined them with the energies of the European settlers. So a lot of times that would be Christianity, as well as the Native Americans that were there intermixing. And so they kind of created their own space because we were not able to worship in the ways that we wanted to. So oftentimes you would see a Christian saint that had the same entity and representation of a Orisha or someone else of a god body, and they would do it in that way. So for me as a root worker, I really tapped into that because root work encompasses astrology, right? You know, astronomy, all of those things. You know, the ancient Kemet, the Egyptians knew these things. They knew, they followed and tracked the stars. They knew what it represented. They created it and put buildings in place to correspond with the stars. They knew that 360 wellness, right? So it's astronomy, astrology, it's herbalism, knowing how do we heal through plant medicine and connecting with nature, as well as how do we connect with our ancestors and understanding that they are always present with us and there's a pantheon of them, and how do we tap into that powers. And so root work ultimately is the interconnectedness of all of that. And for me specifically, always been into plants. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I was privileged enough that both my parents had me out in nature. My dad had me gardening at a young age, and I don't think I really realized it till later on in life when I rediscovered my passion for plants, how much that was a part of me and how much it gave me power. And then also knowing that, like, my lineage of my family and doing ancestral research of understanding that we were farmers, we were planters, we were root workers, we were people doing this work. And so, you know, after 15 years of being an educator, working in expanded learning programs, I embarked on a spiritual self journey, and tried to heal through myself because, again, you got to understand the microcosm in order to help and work with the macrocosm, which is other people. So it was through that journey that I have stepped into this power of healing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I feel like I learned so much just in you like telling your story and giving like the background and the history of root work and kind of how it all came about. So thank you so much for sharing even
Thank
that piece as
you.
well. We did get another question here asking if you have a Patreon. I don't know.
Don't have a
I
Patreon.
think you
That's
should
something
have
to
one.
think about. I am getting started within all of this. Something to note, I actually do natal birth chart readings, full on readings. So on this last page, you can see my email. And so if that is something that you are interested in doing, you want to know, you know, we touched just a little bit on the elemental energies and planets and signs. So if you would like more of an in-depth reading to look at the energies of yourself that the universe has given upon you, and how do you work with those, and how do you create balance, because you know you could have a lot of fire in your chart and no air. So how do you create air? How do you create that 360 wellness? So that is something that I do. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely reach out to me. I also create various sacred jewelry and body pieces and adornments, as far as sacred waist beads that are chakra aligned, emotion aligned, as well as sacred numerology aligned. I do that in different bracelets. But no, this is the start of my journey. If you guys give me a follow on my IG at Through the Trees Collective, you will definitely be seeing more of that over the coming months, of videos, of different things, kind of taking snippets of this stuff, you know, because we're all growing in this journey, you know, so I'm excited to have people here with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. Before we close out, just any final takers, any last burning questions, any words of affirmation you want to give to Nicole, or just any things that you'd like to leave in the space? Okay, I see a hand clap. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yes,
Marina.
yes.
I
Yeah.
appreciate all my loved ones that came and supported me through this, and just everybody that's here. on this journey with me, taking this journey with me. Again, we are only as powerful as our community, and we have to understand that when we help and give to others, that we receive in return. And so, I am grateful to be able to share this space with everyone. This has healed me in a lot of ways. And so, I'm just really grateful for everyone taking the time to join us today. If you liked what you heard and saw, this was obviously a free session, and I'm glad, I received payment in so many other ways of just fulfillment in here. But if you feel it on your heart, my Venmo is located here on the screen. It's at Cole Pauline, as well as my Cash App. There's no little or great amount, or if none at all, no problem. I'm just very grateful, for this space ultimately.
Yes. And just to double click on everything Nicole said, I also dropped her Venmo and Cash App in the chat as well. So if you'd like to copy and paste it from there, it will be there as long as the call is open.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you, everyone. I asked everyone tonight, before you go to bed, before you do this, just to take some reflection on all these things and think about, how can I incorporate 360 wellness in my life? How can I be more mindful? The next time something comes up, a pain or, some emotional thing, really sit and think about, where is this coming from? Let me hit it from all angles, So I challenge everyone to do that.
Awesome.
So
Well, thank you
wonderful.
for coming, Nicole, and holding space for all of us. And again, this event was a part of the kickoff to the Life is Living Festival, which I can't think of any better way to kick off the week with this grounding root work and just remembering that life is sacred, which is the theme of the festival this year. So I just want to thank you again, and thank you all for coming on this Monday evening. You literally could have been anywhere in the world, and you're on a computer looking at us. So thank you again. Support the artist if you can. This event was donation based. And as she said, every little bit helps. If you have it to give it, it'll be greatly appreciated. And yeah, you can send out an email at the end of this, again, with all of Nicole's information if you'd like to continue following her journey and the resources that she's going to be putting out in the very near future.
Yes. Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you
Ashe,
all.
everyone.
Have a good evening.
Wonderful.